This is a blue screen, and this is a green screen. They can both do this, but they work a little bit differently. The first and most obvious difference between these two things is the color. You can actually use any color you want here. The reason we use primarily these two colors for keying is illustrated by this color wheel. Blue and green are both about as far as you can get from human skin tones, which tend to fall into this orangish area. So they're very easy for your camera to differentiate from your skin. To demonstrate this, I found this image that has an array of skin tones on it, and I brought it into Photoshop so we could check it out with our color picker. If you look at our color picker window, you can see that this top left corner is the brightest, least saturated spot. And as we move down to that bottom left corner, we get to the darkest, least saturated spot. So our saturation changes from left to right, and our luminance changes up and down. The further down we go, the darker it is. The further to the right we go, the more saturated. You can see as we move around in here, our H value, our hue, which is on this slider here, doesn't change because our actual hue isn't changing, just the saturation and the luminance, or the brightness. If you watch while I move this around, you'll see the saturation change, and then you'll see the brightness change, or the luminance. And all of these skin tones are very, very close to the same hue with different luminance and saturation values, which is pretty cool. So I'll do some clicking around, and you can see that the hue indicator here is never going to leave this little red-orange area. It'll move around a little bit within there, but it's never going to move too far away. I'll show you this color wheel again, and you'll be able to very clearly see why it's so easy for us to use blue and green screens to key our footage. If you were trying to key something dominantly in the blue and green area of the wheel, like a peacock, or if you had something like this going on, you'd want to go with a red or a similarly contrasted color. Before we get too far into this, I've got to ask you guys a favor. If you enjoy the content I make here on the channel, it would be awesome if you could leave a like on the video. Engagement like that really helps get things moving in the algorithm, and impressions have been down a bit lately. Thanks a bunch. Now, let's get back to green and blue screens. Because of the way the sensor sees light in a digital camera, it's generally easier for them to pick up on green than it is for them to pick up on blue. The opposite is true with film cameras, but that's not the only reason common favor is turned to the green screen. This shade of green, as you can see in the footage here, is much brighter, or more luminous, than this shade of blue. For that reason, you don't need nearly as much light to communicate this green to your camera as you need for the same transmission from the blue. But that ends up being a double-edged sword, because if we zoom in on our keyed subject here, we'll be able to see the difference between these two tools that makes me prefer using the blue screen in most situations I find myself in. That difference is spill.
It's hard to show that because it's behind.
There's a reason CoffeeZilla's headphones are a little green and not a little blue. A lot of people making content for the internet don't have $10 million studios, and if you're close to your green screen, it's going to reflect its green onto you. So one of its biggest strengths, being its luminosity, ends up being one of its biggest weaknesses if you're working in a small area. With a blue screen, on the other hand, we can see that there's barely any spill at all outside of the areas with a lot of motion blur. Keying hair and other small details can be a huge pain using a green screen because of that spill, but on a blue screen, you can do it right on the edit page inside of DaVinci Resolve. If you want to learn how to do that, check out this video right here. I'll see you over there.